morning. This is Ketriana Yvonne. I'm here today with my guest, conductor of the Brooklyn Symphony Orchestra, Nick Armstrong. And this is the Ketriana Yvonne Show. Good morning, Mr. Armstrong. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. Good morning, Ketriana. And please call me Nick.
Okay, Nick. And I like that. I mean, you know, it's a little intimidating, you know, to be interviewing a conductor. So Nick kind of levels it out.
Yeah.
So Nick,
honestly, it's just a job. It's a great job to have. But it's just I'm in awe of everyone who does great work in their field. So here we are, admiring each other.
And it is so many people that do so much great work, and you get to be the leader of all the, well, in one aspect of it, in music, to bring and direct all of those people. So
Yeah.
How has that experience been for you? And tell us about your aspiration in the beginning, like how you came to be a conductor. I know you're not from New York, but you're in your, is it the 45th season for the Brooklyn Symphony?
No, I've been with the orchestra. This is my 26th season with the orchestra, but they will celebrate their 50th anniversary in 2 years' time. So I've been there for half of the orchestra's life, at least, a little longer than that, maybe.
Right. And so can you tell us how that experience has been? Like compared to other orchestras that you led, or how was that? How is it coming to Brooklyn, New York?
Well, the big difference is that this is a community orchestra.
Mm-hmm.
I've had experience before conducting professional orchestras, conducting quite a lot of opera, which I love to do. But working with amateur players who come because they love to make music, they're not doing it for the money because there isn't any, is a wonderful experience. It's food for the soul. I have to say that.
Mm-hmm.
And I look forward to every Monday evening to all of our rehearsals. We do 5 concerts each year at the Brooklyn Museum, and we've been there. I think we've been there 7 years now, and they are wonderful hosts to us. They're a great family for our family to join in with. So the making of music is a great thing. The making of music with people who are there for the love of doing it is extremely special.
Great.
So I came to Brooklyn. I came to New York with my former partner, basically to come to New York. We didn't, neither of us had any real plan to be here. I play violin, and so I played violin professionally most of my life. My first job was at the Opera House in Venice, Italy. I played in the orchestra there, and I got excited about conducting earlier than that, but that was the first time I really had a chance to do much conducting. And I studied composition for my undergraduate degree, so I have that background too. And came to New York and started freelancing in New York. And I met a flute player who at the time was the president of what was then the Brooklyn Heights Orchestra. They performed at St. Anne's in the Heights, St. Anne's and Holy Trinity. And it just so happened that their conductor was stepping down and they were looking for a new conductor. And I auditioned, and it took a couple of years backwards and forwards, but I was finally offered the position, which I'm very happy to do. As I say, it's a wonderful experience. In fact, we just started up again after the pandemic. We're all still wearing masks as much as we can. We're doing all the safe things that we need to do. But I just auditioned 12 new string players for the orchestra, and they're all really good. We're attracting really good players to the group, to a group that was already shining. So it's a thrill to stand in front of close to 80 people who are there to make music together. It's great fun. It's great fun.
Wow. Okay, so you just answered one of my questions. I was trying to figure out if the conductor is the person that so technically you also hire the people in the orchestra. Is that right?
Well, as I say, because we're a community orchestra, there's no hiring as such. People find out about us. Typically now, of course, they find out about us on the internet. They're looking for a place to come play. It's very interesting because being a professional musician, while it's still possible, especially in a place like New York, it's becoming all the more difficult to do so. And there are a lot of musicians, especially younger musicians, who trained professionally but can't get work, but they still want to play. So they come and join us. So that accounts, I think, for some of the high standards that we're seeing with young players coming in. And that's very exciting. It means that as I plan programs for the orchestra, that's my biggest job, I think, is to plan the programming. What do they get to play? And so I have to think to myself, what can I challenge them with? Because I've never been afraid of challenging them. what will they enjoy playing? Because it's important to keep people engaged in what they're doing. And then thirdly, and I think, I don't know which is the more important or the most important of the three, but what will our audiences enjoy? How far can I take them? What if I decide to go down a certain road with them, how willing are they to come? And I will say that the museum has done a spectacular job of promoting the orchestra. So we get a lot of people who come to the museum as a natural thing, and then the music is an added part that they come into. What that means is that a lot of those people coming to the museum are already curious about different kinds of art. They're coming in to see modern art. The Brooklyn Museum has a great collection of modern stuff, and their special exhibitions are always challenging for their audiences. So I feel in many ways we can agree with that. We can get involved in the same kind of way. We can give them kind of a music that they're not entirely familiar with. I think if you want to hear Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, there are a lot of good orchestras around that can do it better than we can. But the kind of music that we do, and we do it well, is the stuff that very few other people are doing. For instance, this concert, that it will have happened by the time this edition goes out, but hopefully some of your viewers will have seen it. But we're doing a program by three composers of color. One of the great things that I experienced during the pandemic was that I had a lot of time on my hands to explore other things. And one of the challenges for me was to go outside of my comfort zone, which is basically the typical, dead white guy music, which is what most of us play all the time, to see what was out there. And it was thrilling to find music that nobody is doing. In fact, we are doing Florence Price's Fourth Symphony. And I did research once we started working on it. I'm finding out that it's actually a New York premiere. It's only been performed about 11 times. It was written in the 30s, but it was only discovered in 2008. So it's almost a new piece, and it's certainly the first performance in New York. So for a community orchestra in New York to be doing that kind of presentation is it's a big thing for us, and I think it's a very exciting thing for an audience to come here. And her music is very approachable. I don't know how much of a music lover you are, or your audience for that matter, but Antonin Dvorak was a big influence in America. And he influenced this composer, even though it's probably 40, 50 years before she was writing, or more even.
Wow.
But you can hear these influences in her music. You can hear the influence of Gershwin in her music. You know that she's been exposed to a lot of music around her before she started writing. And the fact that she's a Black woman composer writing in the 1930s is extraordinary.
Wow.
There were a number, and she's not unique, but she's very high on the list of true quality music. This is beautiful music to perform. It's very well written. Clearly a smart, informed mind has put together this lovely piece of music. I'm thrilled to have learned it and to be performing it for our audience.
So let me ask you a question. So when you said it gave you an opportunity to go into to work with other different artists. So was that, I know right now everything is about inclusion and diversity, and it's like a push in almost every form of everything to include people of color. How was that something that do you think overall, was it anything that you ever looked at and said, something's missing here? How can we change that? Or was it just kind of brought on to most people's consciousness because of the need to have it now?
Honestly, I think between the Me Too and George Floyd and the whole thing that's been happening, of course, we're looking for, I think it becomes logical, because why haven't we been doing this before? But so yes, obviously there's a bit of a political push to look. My approach to all of this has always been, I will play music if it's good music. I think we've done a fairly good job in the past of doing music by women composers, for instance. I've done a fairly good job of finding good music by Latin American composers, or Latinx composers, I guess I have to say now. I'm not shy about looking for music, but it does have to be good. But these are composers. Certainly Zenobia Powell-Perry, who's the least known of the three composers we're doing, has been championed by a composer, another woman composer actually in California. And I discovered the music online, and I've been working with her. Her name is Jeannie Poole, and Jeannie was introduced to Zenobia's daughter, who's an opera singer. And they became close, and the daughter said, you know, you should know my mother's music. There's some really good music that nobody knows anything about. So little bit by little bit, if we can expose an audience to some of this great music that otherwise is not getting out there, then we're doing a big part of our job by doing that. And I'm, you know, and it's a pleasure and an honor to do that. So, but again, at the end of the day, it's a question of it being good music, not just that it happens to be written by one kind of person or another.
Right. And I guess, you know, in order to find that, you would have to, like you said, you came upon it on you said on the internet, right?
Well, yes, I mean, I said that the musicians find the orchestra on the internet, but yes, certainly. I mean, it's now the go-to. You know, we don't have to go and wait in line at the public library for the performing arts at Lincoln Center. You go online and ask questions, and you click the blue link, and you get all sorts of things come up.
Well, I think it's a great time in well, I guess in the world, because it's like different periods of time where it was something that influenced that period, and then it brought in different genres or way of doing things in the arts that influence us today. So I think this is a great time where for most people, they will have the opportunity. I know I just recently went to the Met to see Fire in My Bones Shut Up. And that was like phenomenal. And it was, well, I think it leaves on Saturday. I think Saturday is the last show that'll be live streamed some places. And even for that show, I was just, I guess, while I was watching it, and because it was an all-Black cast and or choreographer and director and writer, But then for me, looking at the orchestra, I was like, but it's still not like it wasn't diverse. And I think hopefully that'll change. I mean, I've gone to I don't know if you're familiar with the Queer Orchestra, which a couple of years ago, they had their first trans conductor. And, you know, so it is like in
I know
some
both
areas.
Ian Schaefer, who's their conductor, and Kyle, who's the transgender conductor. I know them both quite well. And it's a wonderful thing. It's a great group.
Yeah. So, you know, you have these different awareness coming about, but still for us to be like totally where it's not like you're looking and you say, oh, in some areas, you know, like for when things change in one area, they should also flow to all areas. Where you're starting to see it like on TV now, when you look at commercials, is the world that we live in, and not a world that some people that operate the world they live in. So when you look at TV commercials now, you know, just like life, you see diverse families, you know, you may see same-sex couples, biracial children, you know, partners, so forth. And I mean, looking at that seems more real than, you know, what we were accustomed to, because that was the only thing that was offered. So that's, you know, kind of interesting to look at, and how long, even in like modeling, you know, large size women versus, so, you know, we got this big influx of change in all of these things. But for me, I guess I'm hoping that it's just not like a trend that's just happening. And then in a couple of years, you know, people just say, okay, well, we did that. And then try to go back to the same thing. So it'll be interesting to see how the world is shaped from this important period of time, and what lessons are learned. Because I just think it's you know, I think in spite of everything that we're going through, it's a great period to be living in, because it is like a time of change, and what is going, you know, like the age of Aquarius, where people are being more conscious and things will change. So I'm just glad to be alive and to hear good music, and you know, get to talk to people that live this life. For me, it's always been like, I don't sing, I don't play an instrument. I just bought a drum, And I used to say,
if I could draw, I would do it that too. As I used to say, give my right arm to be able to draw.
Yeah, I started out drawing. Now it was so long ago, I don't even know if I could still do it. So but I love the arts, and I try to stay involved in all aspects. And the people that are what I think most people are truly gifted. So I try to appreciate that, and try to just give those people a platform to be heard and have their stories recorded for history. Because that's important. So what
just
did
to
you
back
think?
up a little bit on back up a little bit on what you were saying before about the time of challenge that we live in, and the time of change, and the opera that you saw, and the program that I'm doing. I mean, there is a certain sense that yes, we are checking those boxes. And a number of people challenged me about this program. It's like, why do you feel like you have to do all three pieces by composers of color on one program? Is it to get them out of the way so we can get back to Beethoven afterwards? And it's like, that's a really good question. And I'm thinking it would be wonderful if the opera becomes part of the repertoire at the Met.
Right.
But what a shame if I mean, Porgy and Bess is on the rep now, and that's all the cast of all people of color. But it's a white Jewish composer who did it, It would be nice to have Porgy and Bess and Fire in My Bones
Right.
in the repertoire, but that shouldn't close that checkbox. I think it should just be the first of many operas written by Black composers, Asian composers, women composers, more white composers. Whatever it is, as long as what's put up there is good. It shouldn't be like, well, we did that once and then we can move on. And that's the same for where I am. I have to keep in mind all my programming. I have to make sure that my programs are as interesting as possible. And if that involves putting music in by people from very different backgrounds from a typical white European culture, so be it. I was looking forward to doing a piece by a Cuban American composer. His name is Tanya Leon. He's actually here in Brooklyn, and a very, very difficult piece for my orchestra. But we lost 2 rehearsals because somebody in the orchestra tested positive for COVID, so we had to shut down for 2 weeks. So we put that aside. But it's a great piece. It's very short. It's very colorful. There's clearly a wonderful Cuban influence to it. Oh, it's not obvious. It's not like drums, and it has just a feeling to it about where the inspiration for this particular composer works. Right. And I love doing music like that. It's fascinating to do things that are so different and coming from a different perspective from the ones that we are historically used to in the symphony orchestra. The symphony orchestra, in many ways, is kind of a dinosaur. It's been around for a very long time. It keeps doing the same thing. Something else you said before too, we were talking about modern art at the museum. Music is the last art form for people to be comfortable with the modern element of it. We play pieces by Schoenberg now that were written 120 years ago, and we still think they sound horribly modern. I use the word correctly. People find Schoenberg's music extremely difficult to listen to, but it's 120 years old. Art is 120 years old, which is impressionist art. We don't think anything of it. It's lovely, it's beautiful, and I'd love to have that in my living room. But we don't go, oh, what were they thinking? How could they ever have made horrible stuff like that? But a big chunk of the music audience is still in that position. They still hear modern music and don't connect to it the way audiences do at museums for modern art, or people who read, contemporary fiction, movies, contemporary theater. I mean, people have a wonderful time trying to figure out what those creators are creating in that new language. For us, it's a real hard sell to do anything new. I love doing new music, but it's a hard sell. So that's why I said originally, I have to make sure that my orchestra is willing to do it, and I have to make sure that my audience is willing to be challenged enough to get into it.
Right. So when you say your audience, so is that based on just the patrons that you like? I think what they're finding now, like, which I find it kind of crazy that they're just finding out and doing this inclusion thing, because I feel like people of color always went to plays, and I've been to maybe right before COVID, it was a big push because it's so many plays on Broadway, Tina Turner, the Motown.
Right.
So they had this big gathering, and I guess some of the theaters were there, so they wanted to know. It was just a push to include and try to get an audience, but that had already been being done, like within our community. So I know that I went and other people went. It was like we go to everything. I don't think that people of color look at things and say, I don't want to, I don't even, I think if you love music, you love music. And so that was kind of interesting that this big push started right before COVID. But me looking at it, I was just like, do they think we don't go to the theater? Maybe, for the prices of tickets, some people, maybe look at the at opera and orchestras as, oh no, I'm not really into that, because maybe it's not reflective of, our people. But once they have that experience, it's a whole different thing. I mean, music is music, and music is what draws people together and feeds your soul. So it should work for everyone. So I just have one more question. Well, not one more question, but as a former violinist, one of the people that I love is Damien Escobar. Are you familiar with him as an artist?
I'm not, I'm ashamed to say.
Okay. Well, when you get a chance, just look him up. He's extraordinary.
Escobar?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Damien Escobar. And truly gifted violinist. I think he would be Afro Latino. Juilliard. He was around before, young person, but just truly incredible. So I was just curious if you heard of him. And so
well,
tell me.
I'm grateful for the introduction.
And so when how is it transferring from being the musician in an orchestra, and then I'm just trying to see in your mind, how does it play? Like, musicians, I say, what as a writer, I would say, what comes first, the music or the words? So as a conductor, like I'm trying to see the construct of in the head. How does it flow to do the direction or the creative process of, okay, we're going to, the pieces to formulate, the whole show.
Right.
How does that process work for you?
Okay. So I'm playing the violin is playing an instrument. And as a conductor, my instrument is the orchestra. It's a very direct relationship.
Great.
As far as what a conductor does, I like to use the example of a director of a play. The director has the script in front of him, the whole script, and the actors have to learn their parts.
Right.
And it's the director's job to make sure that the actors use their own talents to bring a unity to the play that's going on stage. And then by the time the play goes on stage before an audience, the director's out of the way, he's gone on to the next plan. A conductor's role is really the same thing. By the time a concert happens, the orchestra shouldn't need the conductor. They really shouldn't need the conductor. I mean, with professional groups, that's all the more true. And there are a number of good orchestras, Orpheus Chamber Orchestra, for instance, in New York, and a lot of orchestras around the country now that are conductorless. They learn the music together. They put the music together without the benefit of one vision. But for a group like this, they still need a director. And in fact, in many languages, the word for conductor is director. Same word as for the stage director. The difference is that we stay there. We stay and wave our arms around in front of an audience.
Right.
And one of the great things about that is that can actually act as a focal guide to the audience. If they see me turning towards the cellos to ask the cellos to do something with my hand, their attention goes there too. Or if I'm looking back at the brass section and something wonderful happens there, it helps the audience to be visually directed to things that are going on. I'm not sure that we ever think about that consciously, but I think unconsciously it's a great thing. And in fact, I remember I met this wonderful bass player who used to play at the Met, but he also worked a number of times with Leonard Bernstein, who's our great hero in conducting. And he would say, Bernstein was known to the audience as jumping up and down, waving his hair and hair going everywhere and sort of crazy. In rehearsal, he was very calm about everything. It's like he said, basically, it needs to be softer, louder, slower, or faster. It was I mean, that's very simplistic, but that's the work that gets done. It's like you don't, as a conductor, you never want to get in the way of what musicians are there to do. They're all artists at whatever level, whether they're getting paid for it or not. They are artists, and it's our job as conductors to bring the best of them out. The day of the conductor being the autocrat and dismissing people on the spot and get out and have dare and swear at them is well and truly over, thankfully, because there's an understanding, I think, broadly that the musicians that we're dealing with are great artists of their own right, and they need to be respected for that.
Well, I feel like you explained that so well that I have a fuller understanding of, you know, you made the metaphor of a director as a conductor, and so that's good. Thank you. Now, I mean, not that I know what a conductor does, but just hearing it from a conductor and trying to visualize how it actually works, like, you know, and like you said, not taking in the information from the trying to bring out the best in the players.
Right. The other element of that analogy is that, in fact, I have a score in front of me. I can see what everyone is doing. And one of the skills that conductors have to learn is to be able to read the score of the music as if it's a book. We have to be able to hear in our inner ear what it's going to sound like, to have a conception of that, just the same way that a director of a play has to have a conception of what the whole play feels like.
Right.
But the musicians in front of me only have their part.
Right.
My oboe
and
player
all those parts play together.
So my job is to say, well, at this point in the music, your part is really important, but you're doing it with a bassoon player. So I want the two of you to work together right now. Or the strings that you're enjoying yourselves too much. I love to tell them that. So I don't say you're playing too loud. I say you're enjoying yourselves too much. You're having too much fun here. What's happening? What's happening at the back of the orchestra that you're covering up? And somebody might say, well, I think there's a clarinet solo. I said, well, there is a clarinet solo, but if you can't hear it, you're having too much fun. You need to pull back and let them do that. So my job is to be the ears of the audience, the ears for the orchestra themselves. So because it's a very different experience being in the middle at the front than it is being at the back of the bass section over here. They hear very different things than I do and than the audience does. So it's a big responsibility for us conductors, directors, to take all that information that we're hearing, process it, compare it to what's in the score, compare it to what we want it to sound like, and then make that come across in a way that people feel compelled to do what I want, but at the same time make them feel they're doing it of their own free will. It's a lot of psychology. We play a lot of different roles. We play den mother, we play group psychologist, we play dominatrix. There are all sorts of things that we have to do to get these results from our players. And then at the end of the day, make them feel like it's their product that they're giving the audience. It's a fascinating task. It's really fun to do.
Right. And I can tell. I mean, I'm, watching you, and I know it's a lot of joy that you feel by the work that you do and a love for it. So I'm sure that's all that energy is directed into the player, the musicians, and then that's transferred back to the audience. So that's a great thing. For some people, I guess, I'm sure some conductors that are not as, I don't know. I don't really know. But do you think all conductors are, you think there's some conductors that are not so much in tune anymore? Like,
good word.
Where they actually still have the joy for it?
Probably, probably not as, that's a very hard question. I remember when I was very young doing a conducting workshop with one of the teachers at the Juilliard School, Sixten Ehrling. And Sixten Ehrling was very, very well respected as a musician, very well respected for what he did in front of an orchestra, for his interpretations. But when you talk to him as a man, he was very cynical about it. He would say, there were a group of 5 of us working with him, and we would meet with him privately, as just that group. And he said, you're all young and you're all enthusiastic and full of high hopes for your careers. First of all, not many of you are going to have a career. You should be ready for that. Second, if you have a professional career, you've got to get used to spending most of your life living out of a suitcase in a hotel room that you don't particularly want to be in, having dinner with people you don't want to have dinner with, conducting orchestras who may or may not be able to do what you want them to do. These are all things. And at that point in his career, when he was talking to us, it was clear that was the life he'd had, and he wasn't terribly happy with it. Does that affect the enthusiasm for the music making itself? I don't know. I would hope not. But like any job, it's a job, you know, and
Right.
every job is
Right.
full of great stuff, and then it's full of really annoying things that you just have to glom through to get it done. So
Yeah,
your question is a good one, but I would hope that the actual process of making the music never gets to a point where you
right.
don't want to do it, because you
Yeah.
should stop doing it. Make
Or
room for
that,
somebody else.
yeah, or maybe that just the aspect of the actual job. But then
I've lost you.
for some
Yeah.
people, I could see that maybe the problem is if, you know, maybe you're stuck in your head for a certain period, or you think things should be a certain way. And, you know, like maybe watching something and you're saying, that's not, like, you know how in ballet or jazz, like when things change and people add on to a classic, and then it's maybe not viewed as being correct. It's just like in jazz, you know, when Miles Davis or John Coltrane did something different, we're like to the point where we're in this period where people could appreciate what they were doing then, but maybe at that time people were like, you know, if you were in a band, it would be, we're not doing that, you know, like stick to, you know, what is so. And so I can kind of see, but when I'm looking at you, I just see joy. So I see somebody fully involved in loving what they do, and sort of, I don't know, but you look like you fully embraced it entirely. And you know, you probably would love the traveling and the interaction with the musicians, like a full scope. I mean,
It would be great. We're talking about the orchestra did a trip to Mexico literally 2 years ago, right at the beginning of the pandemic. They got back into New York about 3 days before the city shut down. Mm-hmm. And that was the first trip they'd ever taken abroad, and they loved it. So we're looking at taking a small group of them maybe to Italy next year. Wow. And to be able to take our music somewhere else, you know, because it's easy to do. Once you've learned it, pack your bag and your violin, and you're off. You're doing it. Yeah, it's great. It really is great.
And probably just to maybe like performing in other countries, the appreciation for the music from our music here. You know, I guess back in the I want to say early days, the period where people they had the goodwill tours, like with Black musicians would go overseas, and that's still the way it is now. It's sort of like you're not as appreciated here for the work that you do, and you go overseas and you get all this love and you have fans, because it's like people that were even, you know, just groups or musicians from the 60s and so forth.
Yeah.
If like now people may not really know who these people are, but they still could perform like in Germany or Japan and have this huge following, or have people over there that know their work and want to work with them. So I think I mean, I can see like the experience of going to Italy, that would probably just be amazing. And what that would also give to those artists when they perform again, you know, here. Because you pick up what that energy is that you experienced in another place. And that's the thing about music and how it just brings everyone together. So I think that the music is the answer to everything. So I applaud you for, you know, all the things that you do to make it happen. And I think an orchestra is like one of the most amazing things. Like I'm always listening and I'm just amazed how everyone like is on one tune, which is what you're supposed to be. But for me, I'm like, how does that happen? Like, I'm always fascinated by that. Like one person could be off but you never hear that, you know, but for me, it's like, wow, to play and everyone stops and starts at the same, it's such a discipline and a gift, because I probably would envision myself and I would be the one that I would, you know, throw the whole thing off. So I can totally appreciate the, you know, what everyone as a part of an orchestra. It's like, I guess it's like a great analogy of a team, everyone working together. And
well, that's the training, and that's what we're there for, is to make sure that everyone has an understanding of what they do. But you know, it's live performance, and we're all human, and we're doing it for love. Of course, things go wrong. I mean, it's part of the fun, because then everyone knows how to get back in. You know,
so
we don't have to stop. We just keep going. And everybody clicks back in a moment or two later. But absolutely, I mean, that's one of the glories of live performance. And you were mentioning before, for me, one of my main approach to any piece of music that I'm doing, whether it was written yesterday or it was written 200 years ago, is to take the score as if it was written yesterday, as if nobody's ever heard it before. I don't I don't add notes or take things out. I do exactly what's on the page. But I look at it as if I've never heard it before. Even if it's an extremely well-known piece of music, I look and I go, I've tried very hard to get into the composer's mind. I mentioned earlier that I have a degree in composition. And I don't really write anything. I mean, it was a degree because when I was young and very foolish, I thought I'd be a composer. But I'll tell you, for a conductor, it's the best training, because it shows you how to get into the mind of the composer.
Wow.
So I look at something written down and I go, okay, I see the motivation behind that. I think and where this is coming from. I don't just look at something and automatically go, oh, this is that piece, and it goes la la la. You know, I really do try and break it down as if I've never heard it before. And that's part of the freshness to bring, and people pick up on that. You know, I don't make a big deal of that in words, but in the way that I present my ideas to the orchestra, what I ask them to do, there's very often a sense of, oh, that's interesting. You know, I hadn't thought of it that way, or oh, now I see what that is. That's very exciting, because that truly is creative. I used to say that being a conductor was a recreative thing. The creative part is writing the piece, but the composer does that, and we recreate it, so it's recreative. But I think actually my job is to be creative with the music, in the sense of understanding. Just like the actor playing Hamlet doesn't read to be or what to be, that is the question, whether it is never. They have to stop and think about pacing, tone, the who they're addressing it to. It's supposed to be a monologue, an interior thing, but there's an audience listening. All those challenges for an actor are there for us as musicians too. How loudly do we play? How prominent is something? How reserved does it need to be? How does it balance with the other things around? How will the audience react to what I'm doing? We had a rehearsal on Monday night, and we had a new player come in, not a new player, I've known her very well, and she has a magnificent solo, and she did a beautiful, beautiful job of it. And the whole orchestra, next time we stopped, the whole orchestra just burst into applause for it. It's a lovely thing, because she deserved that, because she had communicated something very wonderful about the music, and she'd made it hers. And it was like, yes, that's what we want to do. That's exactly what we should be doing. And it was beautiful, just lovely.
So what are the challenges that or what would you want to take on that you haven't done? Like I heard you say you studied being a composer and how it helps you. Do you think and you said you don't write, do you think at some point it would be in your spirit to compose something that you would actually have the orchestra do, or?
Well, this is our little secret, so your audience can't possibly let this out, because if I don't follow through with it, I don't want to eat my words. But as I said, it's the orchestra's 50th anniversary in 2 years' time, and I would love to write something for them to celebrate that. Something small. It doesn't have to be a massive piece, but something like that would be a wonderful challenge, and a great way to sort of have a little bit of a legacy that's my own with the orchestra, apart from the other things like that I do. Not that I'm looking for a legacy, but it would be nice to have something. You know, Nick did this for us. That would be a nice thing.
Okay. Well, you better start writing. Have you?
Yeah, I know.
Oh, it hasn't come. Well, I think that'll happen. That sounds like something that, I mean, 50th anniversary. That's, you need something super duper special
for a community group. That's real longevity, and it's a great thing to celebrate. You know, the orchestra started in 1973. Yeah, 73. So 73, 74. So 23, 24 would be the 50th anniversary. And it started with a little group of people meeting in the parish hall at St. Anne's. And it's grown into, a good 80, 85-piece symphony orchestra over the years. That's absolutely worth celebrating.
Yeah. Well, I look forward to this production on Sunday, as well as
Yeah.
the one where you're a part of the anniversary when you're composing something. That would be incredible.
All right. Well, we'll stay in
Yeah.
touch. We'll see what
Actually,
happens.
that sounds like, I mean, it has come to you already, so you must do it. So I know it's already in your spirit, so to happen.
Yeah. You know how when you cook, you have to go and shop for all the ingredients first?
Yeah.
I'm still shopping for the ingredients. I don't have the recipe worked out yet, and I haven't started
Mhm.
cooking. I'm a great fan of
Well,
analogies. I love analogies. So
everything is just a step. So
yeah.
that would be, yeah, because that's it's actually, for me, I'm a writer, poet. So I remember I did a piece a couple of years ago, and I collaborated with someone, and that was like my first collaboration. And I learned that when you collaborate with someone, you get something totally different from both people. It
Yep.
kind of pulls you, opens you
Yeah.
up to a new being, right, to be explored. And so I had this piece, and I'm like, immediately the first thing came to me was, this is an opera. Oh, this could be a play. This could be like, all these
Yeah.
different things that me just writing poetry, I don't think I would have wrote something and said, oh, wow, this could be an opera. And so this has been about, I guess it was about 3 years ago. So now, I go piece by piece. 1 minute I'm doing poetry, the next minute. But I'm always interviewing people in the arts and culture because I love music. And I guess the thing about me, I don't play anything, I don't sing, but I have a gift to know greatness. And so that's why I try to give people an opportunity I say the legends of the future, because most of the people I interview are they're already great, but it's just the world doesn't know it because it's such a celebration for the people repeatedly that have already made it, that
Yeah.
I don't think you get to, these people out here doing great stuff, but nobody knows about them. So to speed that process is like, I try well, I think it makes a difference. I don't think most people know that it does make a difference. You know, the work that people do, and how when other people do stuff to support it, as a whole, it gets it fully exposed. And for me, I'm a visionary. Like, I can look and say, oh, this person's they're gonna be doing this, and it's like by the next week it's like some great thing happened. Not to say that it wasn't going to happen to this person, but I don't know if it's the confidence or just to have the recognition. I think people just open up a little bit more and things happen. So I don't know what's going to happen for you for next
Well,
week.
I'm not a young person by any means, but I'm not an old person yet. I'm hoping for my life that I'll have at least one more very big adventure before they put me in the oven. So, the orchestra's there, and as you say, there are a lot of young people. One of the problems with New York, and it's a very great problem, a great good problem, is that there's an awful lot of really great people here. There are a lot of very talented people. Yes, the field is very crowded, so it's very hard to be seen. And at some point, when the right person comes along, someone that I can trust to continue good work with the orchestra, I'll be happy to step aside for them and let them continue the good work.
Right. Well,
I
we're
don't.
not saying we want you to step aside, but I'm just speaking in general. Who knows what your next path will be?
Right,
I
absolutely,
mean,
no idea.
because once you write and compose this big thing, and who knows what's going to happen.
I knew I shouldn't have said anything about it.
No, okay, we won't talk about it. It's still a secret. We just dream. No, we're not. What dreaming is
It's the
creating
beginning of
for the
everything.
reality. So, yeah, but I can see that. I mean, because no matter what you do, you always want to grow. And, life is like a puzzle. You don't know what, like you said, you studied that and you never wrote anything. And I'm sure if you looked at your life from the beginning, starting as playing the violin, and each step and how you ended up here, and all the places you've been, and you
Right.
look back and you put it together and you're like, none of that was by chance. It's all planned. So
Actually, I would take exception with it. I have really, I like to use again another analogy of my ship sailing on the sea of life. And I've gone where I've gone wherever it's taken me. I ended up in the States because I met an American, and we fell in love. I was working in Italy, and in fact, my job in Italy, my very first job after I finished university in England, I had spent 2 summers in Italy playing in an opera festival, and I'd met a cellist from London. And after I'd gone back that September, I'd graduated, I had no work. She wrote me out of the blue and said, "Do you want a job in Venice? I'm playing at the opera house there and they need a violinist." And I was like, "You've got to be kidding," but yes, I do. I jumped on the next train from London, I took the boat across, took the train to Venice, and I ended up sitting in a chair in the orchestra of one of the most famous opera houses in the world.
wow.
And I met my partner there and followed him back to America. And we ended up I went to school in Virginia, in Richmond, purely as a way of staying in the country, really, because as you do, you get the student visa. But I had a great teacher there, a great conducting teacher, and started to do some work down there. And then we decided to move to Washington, D.C.
Oh, great.
Well, for a musician, then it wasn't the best thing. I spent 7 years of my life wondering why I was there. And then we decided to move to New York, just out of the blue. And it was that's something I should have done 7 years earlier. But almost everything I've done has been circumstance. I haven't really thought about what I was going to do or made plans. And I've been extremely fortunate with my life. Everything has turned out really, really well.
Wow.
So I'm not a great believer in fate or, all that. But if there is such a thing as fate, it has been and has been very kind to me. So I'm grateful.
Wonderful. And I actually lived in DC, and that would be one of the places that, like I always say, I lived different places, but my spirit was DC. Like I went there one time and I was like, oh, I like this place. I like the people, and I just had such a good time. I'm like, I'm moving. And I moved within 6 months. And I think I lived there for, but then I moved to Silver Spring and I worked in DC. And it was about within 6 months, I ended up meeting someone and got married within that year. And that wasn't really a part of the plan, but like you say, and that took me away from DC. So I'm still always like, but my spirit called me to be there, and it hasn't called me like really to any, like it was a different feeling. But who knows? Maybe it was just for that reason. But it's hard to tell, But I always tell people, go to the place where your spirit calls you, because it's a reason. Like some people just move.
It's very good advice. It's very good advice.
It could be anywhere. It's no particular thing. But I think most people, like they visit, like I visited San Antonio, and I've been to Spain and different places around around the world. But I still say, out of all the places I've been, San Antonio somehow was just extraordinary for the feeling of not sort of like community and just graciousness. Everyone was just nice. And even when I meet people now and I'm like, are you from San Antonio? Like they just have it's like the South has their hospitality and the warmth, and New York, like true native New Yorkers. I'm a native New Yorker, so I can speak. Most people have this aspect, oh, New Yorkers are hard. And I mean, I'm not hard, and I think I'm I think I'm a New Yorker by spirit. And, it's a good thing, not the definition of what most people think New Yorkers, like you gotta watch out. And it's always funny for me because I can like meet people from Chicago or North Carolina, and the sharpness or that is reflected on us is more is more so from those places. And people tend to not like New Yorkers sometimes because they think, oh, they city slickers or whatever. And so it's just kind of interesting. getting to travel and meet
Yeah,
different people and
yeah,
know where you're supposed to be, and then later looking at like why you may have been in that place and come
yeah,
full circle
yeah.
and connected, and it's a good story.
I mean, I agree with you about all that. I'm not a native New Yorker, as you pointed out before, but I feel like those people who say, "Oh, New York's horrible, don't want to go there," it's like, great, don't come. We don't want you, because we're really good people and we care about each other. We live shoulder to shoulder. I think that's one of the exciting things about New York. All of us are different here. We live shoulder to shoulder. We can't avoid each other. I mean,
Right.
I wouldn't pretend that we don't have issues in this city. Of course we do, like anywhere else. But on a day-to-day basis, I think typically most of us who are sensitive to our environment know that we rub shoulders with literally people from all over the world, of
Right.
every different color, different kind, different shape, size, whatever. And that's I think is the most wonderful thing about the city. I love it. I love New York.
Mm-hmm.
The
Mm-hmm.
very first day I arrived with a moving truck from DC, and we unpacked in what was then called Cobble Hill East, I think.
Uh-huh.
Very
It's
close to where
not
I live
South Hill
now.
now.
I think it's, the real estate people changed the name again, I think. But, we
I'm
got
not
out of the truck and
expecting any changes.
this old guy comes up just to introduce himself, says, where are you guys from? What do you think of the weather? He was like right in our face right from the beginning. He was so friendly and so welcoming. And when we both looked at each other and went, yes, this is the move we needed to do. So I'm
Wow.
very happy to be here. And I'm very happy that I've ended up with my orchestra. We are doing the concert this weekend, which your audience will have missed by the time they see this lovely podcast. But let me say that we're doing a concert in December of music by New York composers.
Wow.
So we're celebrating the city coming back to life. And is it possible on your podcast to do it? Oh, your podcast goes out visually, right?
It's TV.
Yeah. So is it possible for you to put a link at the bottom of your screen to the orchestra website?
Sure. You can say it and just send it to me and I'll add it to this.
Good, great. It's brooklynsymphonyorchestra.org. That's all one word, brooklynsymphonyorchestra.org. And please ask your lovely audience to come be part of our family. They'd be very, very welcome.
And this is for the New York, which is when is it? December, you said?
December 12th.
December 12th.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're doing
And do they do
Bernstein.
group tickets for that? Can you do group tickets sales or no? They're not.
We actually don't really do group tickets. The tickets can be bought online through the website. There's a discount if you buy them on the website. They're $20 for the ticket and $25 if you pay at the door. Children under 16, we let in for free. Right now, of course, the museum, I'm not sure that they're letting anyone in without masks, including kids.
Right.
And we are all, obviously, we're all vaccinated. That's a policy we have, the museum has, we're taking every to protect people.
Went to the Obama portraits at the museum. Yeah, and they check everything.
Yeah.
Before you get in, and that's always good to let people know, because some places let people in with testing, and then some place, like I just did an event and it was like, oh, I'm sorry, they didn't take testing, so it was like you had to be vaccinated, and it kind of eliminated. And then it was like, before you had to send your information in. Well, they asked you to send it in, so you don't have to do it at the door, but you don't have to do that. So that sounds like a great season, a lot to look forward to.
Yeah.
A lot of joy.
I appreciate your interest very much. Thank you for doing this interview.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to Sunday. I'm bringing a friend of mine who is a triplet, and one of his brothers, he studies classical music. I don't know his brother as well. I just know that they're a lot, even though they're triplets, they're kind of different. And so, and I usually take him to different things. Some people, they haven't figured out what their music, what is their motivation as far as the arts. And I guess I'm just all over the place. I just been surrounded by arts and culture and fashion and most of my life. And I always felt like, I don't know what it is, and maybe this is it, just being a vehicle for people, because like I said, I would dream about people in my, and I don't dream like where I can really remember, but I remember my dreams of certain musicians and being at pianos and stuff like that. And so that kind of stays with me. And I'm like, I don't know what this is going to lead to, but if it's in music, I'll take it, you know.
Yeah,
so who
yeah.
knows?
I think being open to what I was out there is a great thing. I'm trying very hard to learn to be a little more open-minded about what I listen to, and that's a good thing.
All right, so thank you very much. This has been my interview with Mr. Nick Armstrong, the Brooklyn Symphony Orchestra, and that's Brooklyn Symphony. No,
Brooklyn Symphony Orchestra.org.
Yes. And tickets for performance on December the 12th is available at, is it on sale now?
Yes, yeah, for our whole season, we have 5 concerts coming up. So we have 4 more after the one that I'll meet you at on Sunday. So I'm looking forward to meeting him. We'll chat at the museum.
Okay, great.
Very good.
So thank you so much for your time. And
thank you. It's been a great pleasure, Ketriana. Okay, take care.
Enjoy this episode. See you
Thank
next
you.
time.
All right.
Keep love.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Enjoy your day.
Thanks.
In these evil and troubled times, it's really hard to see the sunshine. It's even harder to smile when all you